Giro here for Umbra Games with a review of Tom Clancy's The Division, played on PlayStation 4. We'd been hearing about The Division very nearly since the PS4 was announced back in February of 2013, so with it releasing a couple weeks ago in March of 2016, we had quite a bit of time to let the expectations build. But as usual, I'll try and be objective here. The Division takes place in New York City, in what very well could be present day or near future, and a virus outbreak has killed most of the city's population. The outbreak began at a department store on Black Friday, and quickly made New York a giant quarantine zone. The majority of those that survived join one of the street gangs or factions and are fighting for control of what's left of the city. Thus enters the Division, elite operatives called in to clean up messes like this, helping to restore peace by killing gang members, taking back important city infrastructure, and rescuing hostages. Each area in New York has a suggested character level before you try and venture in, and each has its own main missions, supply missions, side missions, and collectibles. While The Division was originally talked about as an MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role-playing game, it actually shares more in common from a gameplay perspective with games like Borderlands, or more specifically Destiny, with a few shared social areas but 1 to 4 player missions that you can play with your friends or pickup groups through the matchmaking tool. The amount and type of content, however, very much have the Ubisoft touch, like an Assassin's Creed or The Crew, where you go somewhere and reveal a bunch of side events and collectibles, complete them, move on to the next area, rinse and repeat. Now, while The Division may look like a third-person shooter, it definitely belongs more in the action RPG realm. Your character has statistics, and as they gain experience and level up, their health, skill power, and firearms abilities climb. Each weapon has a DPS, damage per second, of which it uses the base damage of the weapon, multiplied by clip size and accuracy, as well as the player's stats to determine. There are assault rifles, marksman rifles, submachine guns, light machine guns, and shotguns. You can carry 2 of these weapons at a time, and always have a sidearm with infinite ammunition for when you run out with your primaries. Damage done to enemies shows numbers, including bonus damage for headshots, and occasionally bumps for a randomly generated critical hit. The Division lacks a true class system, and instead has swapped it for skills belonging to 1 of 3 trees: medical, security, and technology. Once unlocked, you can change skills on the fly, having 2 equipped at any given time, as well as 1 master level skill, of which there's 1 for each tree. The medical includes things like a heal shot and a support station that players can gather around and be revived or healed, security, which produces a shield and mobile cover, and technology, which includes my favorite, the remote detonating sticky bomb, as well as things like a turret. Each skill has a master level mod that can be unlocked in addition to your choice of 1 other mod. There are talents that as a whole provide a fairly minimal influence and by endgame have 4 slots to fill, and perks that are always on your character once unlocked. Finding a good combination of skills with your party is necessary, especially in harder difficulty levels, having each group member take different buffs to help against those higher level, crazy troops. The character creation features are fairly limited, allowing you to choose your gender, a choice of a dozen or so faces and hairstyles, and then some face paint or tattoos, but everyone is extremely ugly. Luckily, you can find, buy, and otherwise obtain tons of appearance items from hats to shoes to give your character more style, with quite a few options. As you work your way through the streets and buildings of New York, you'll pick up consumables, including several grenade types like fragmentation and shock, things like bottled water, which temporarily increases damage done to elite enemies, and explosives and fire bullets that add some of that elemental damage to your ammunition for a limited period of time. We often found ourselves forgetting about these early in the game, but using them more often as we approach some of the more challenging content. In the tutorial of the game, you work on establishing a base of operations, which has 3 wings. These wings each have 10 upgrades, which open new skills, talents, perks, mods for your skills, gear and weapon vendors, and also some supplies that you can collect every hour. You open new upgrades by completing main missions and encounters of that type and then using the rewards to purchase them. Your character has 6 gear slots, and in a true dungeon crawling manner, you get tons of drops from enemies and chests to deck out your character. The game uses a rarity scale going from gray common to green, blue, purple, and yellow and orange high end. Some gear have mod slots that you can add additional firearm stamina or electronics upgrades, as well as percentages to skill boosts. Weapons can also be modded with scopes and handles for increased performance. Upon obtaining new items, you can choose to sell your old stuff for credits, or break it down into components and craft new ones using blueprints you find along the way. You can even make higher level crafting components out of the lower level components you have to keep things relevant. So this brings us around to the way to get some of the best loot in the game, an area called the Dark Zone. This is the player versus player component of the Division, where you and your group dive into highly contaminated and wild parts of the city that the good guys have pretty much deemed irrecoverable. As you dive deeper and deeper, you find more elite enemies that drop loot, but rival Division agents can also choose to go rogue, opening fire on you and taking your drops. In order to add the contaminated loot you find in the Dark Zone to your inventory, you have to call in an extraction and manage to stay alive long enough from a rush of NPCs as well as players until you can attach your loot to the helicopter's rope. Once extracted, you can go to your player stash and equip any upgrades you may have found. Every enemy you destroy gives you Dark Zone experience, and you can also pick up Dark Zone credits as well, enabling you to buy loot from specific Dark Zone vendors available based on your overall rank. When you attack another player, you and your group are marked as rogue agents. Your first infraction will give you a short timer, but each player attack you perform against non-hostile agents on top of that will increase your timer and bounty on your head, encouraging other players to hunt you down. Once you go massively rogue, the timer reaches 5 minutes, and you're placed on the minimap as a manhunt for all nearby players to see. Now, the one problem and major flaw I see in this system is that there really isn't a good end to it once you go that rogue. Once you're being manhunted, the only thing you can do is hide and hope that no one finds you. Because even if it's self-defense, any attack you make on anyone else keeps resetting your timer to the 5 minutes. There really just needs to be some objective to take off the timer, because hiding for that long just gets really boring. So the map interface is pretty neat as it comes up around you, but unfortunately, like most good data analysis, it's not enhanced by the 3D element of it. It's fairly useless when trying to find the best way to navigate some of the streets and alleyways. There's a safe house in every zone that once unlocked can be fast traveled to, and you can also restock and mess with your player stash from there. You can read the situation board and talk to an officer there to reveal all the available activities in the area as well. So I really enjoyed the game's AI at the beginning. Most of my exploits were in a group of 3, and it was really great to see the way the enemy would try and take strategic advantages and react to the way that you would flank them. The degree of AI reaction was actually pretty remarkable. But what started to happen in the higher level areas was the enemy just throwing tactics to the wind because of the number of clips the game knew you had to take to kill a guy. They would just run kamikaze at you with their shotguns 2 or 3 at a time in a very unlike Tom Clancy kind of way. One place where this game feels very Ubisoft is the overabundance of collectibles. There are 293 pieces of intel to collect, including phone recordings, crashed drones, echo devices, incident reports, and missing agents. I realize it's optional. I mean, the full collection of these things are mainly for vanity items or for trophy or achievement sakes, but man, it just feels like a ton of filler. Fortunately, the side missions do have enough objectives to where you do one type 4 or 5 times, repeated throughout the entire thing, and the tactics needed can vary in each one of those, so you're not overly tired of it by the time you reach the 100% mission completion. The overall co-op experience with The Division is very enjoyable. You can fast travel to a team member's position, so if you're just joining or if someone gets entranced finding a nearby collectible, you can easily catch up. The group management is fairly simple, and picking up random party members is easy as well. One difficulty we had early on is a typical issue you have when playing games like this. The main missions have a difficulty setting, normal being the minimum suggested level of an area, hard mode matching it to the highest player in your group's level, and challenging, which I'll hit on in a minute. If one player can't make it to a session, and they get too far behind in level, you're either doing missions on normal, which makes it too easy for the upper level guys, or you do it on hard, which makes the lower level player pretty useless. But you'll have the same thing in games like Borderlands or most MMOs that don't have scaling. So let's talk in-game. Once you complete the game's final story mission, daily missions become available, allowing you to redo 2 of the game's missions per day in hard mode, giving you a currency called Phoenix credits. These credits can be used to buy weapons and blueprints to make orange, high-end gear. In addition, one of the dailies has you do a challenging difficulty mode, which is made for 4 level 30 characters with the promise of bonus Phoenix credits and yellow high-end gear. In addition, with the Season Pass, Ubisoft promises 3 upcoming DLC expansions, monthly events, and other free updates for the Dark Zone starting in April and May, bringing new missions and things to do. We're still pretty close to the original release and have yet to see the quality of their added content, but with about 40 to 45 hours for 100% completion, even though it had what I consider filler, at least there's a good chance that we'll get some unique and additional things to do. The developers did their best to give their missions their own distinct feel and environment, but let's be honest, you're in New York, so there's really just a handful of area types like construction sites, power plants, office buildings, or sewers, and then you kind of seen them all. I heard that as a criticism from a group member, not having diverse enough content, but let's be realistic. Tom Clancy always stick to more of the military, modern themes, and not so much on the fantasy. It is what it is. We did have some server issues from time to time, randomly getting kicked off once or twice, and one time I actually lost some progress when I logged out and got an error. I had a time or two where my buttons wouldn't respond. I mean, I could run with the left stick and roll with the X button, but couldn't fire a gun or climb or anything else. A log out and back in would fix the issue. There are also a couple times where you could actively feel a lag, like when you're waiting for an enemy to pop out of cover with your reticle perfectly over their head and then they'd somehow shoot you before they even became visible. Getting hit while in full cover seemed to happen a lot too. I mean, these are the most accurate waves of enemies I've ever encountered in a game, but in one aspect I appreciate that. It really makes you consider how you approach a situation, as well as how you try to run from it. But on the other hand, sometimes finding no place safe as bullets somehow come through 3 feet of concrete barrier and hit you while you're protected just starts to get a little ridiculous. I found myself not really caring about the finer story points and characters I was presented with in the game, partially because a lot were very one-dimensional and stereotypical, and partially because of the aforementioned 293 pieces of intel to pick up and read or listen to, and anytime you're in a group, you're not going to give those kinds of things the attention they need to produce the desired results. I mean, we're here for the cooperative shooting. If you can't make everything audio that goes over the top while we're doing something else, your players probably aren't going to pay much attention. We often found ourselves making fun of some of the phone recordings as we picked up though, because a lot of the voice acting is pretty terrible and quite humorous. Overall with The Division though, I look forward to the additional content, and we'll be doing some daily missions in the weeks to come. Once every one of my friends hits level 30, we can also find groups more easily to tackle some of the in-game content, and I think it's going to increase its enjoyment even more. The Division is an action RPG, third-person shooter hybrid, and rated as such gets a 71 out of 100 in my book. This is Jiro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching.